This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com. This show is brought to you by IndyWrestling.us. Check out IWC, RWA, and more. And listeners like you, support this show at patreon.com/Wrestling Mayhem Show.
I'm hungry as fuck, but I ain't starving yet. Chain for the pain, cocktail bar set. Never said I was a gangster or thug, but I'm an animal. Beating for the taste of the blood.
That's fine. I got to take a nap. Before I came in to do shows, so we're good.
For you.
You're in your
Very
prime.
me of you.
You're in your prime time. This is the show. It's the Indy Mayhem Show. This is how we're starting it. Our post-snap podcast about professional wrestling, talking with people in and around independent professional wrestling, and these days just how they're dealing with not wrestling or being around wrestling. So please go check out everything at WrestlingMayhemShow.com, IndyWrestling.us. We have a lot of COVID-19 help links over there, of course, so go over to that page, and we have a lot of Patreons and pro wrestling tees and whatever there is to help out a lot of the people that we follow through IndyWrestling.us and this show, friends of the network, friends of the show, all the likes. And one of those friends of the show, usually I've been booking groups of people just to kind of touch base, hang out, see how everybody's hanging out. But I know we can fill a half hour very easily, because just when I drop something off at his house, I feel like we're standing outside on the sidewalk for 6 feet apart because we are conscious. Joe Dombrowski, announcer extraordinaire, with us on the line.
Just with my multiple personalities, I'm a chat group. I also want to point out that was probably the most rapid introduction you've ever done. You must be wired on some kind of caffeine right now.
Am I? Yeah, I'm all set right now. Like Joe, I'm like making and drinking half a pot a day at least. So on the tough days, it's a full pot. So, this is how we get by. These days. I'll be up until 4 a.m. I'm on your schedule now.
Congratulations, but I do that naturally. Yeah. You got to just let yourself wean out of this whole daylight stuff and just hit your stride at 1 a.m.
Well, the problem is, Joe, this should be my travel season. I know you travel all around multiple countries all year long, but I got this 3 to 4 month period I prepare for every year, and it just went away. And now I'm just coping with caffeinated coping this whole time.
I mean, I can relate to that because, things shut down right around the start of the busiest time of my year.
Yeah.
Because we're talking WrestleMania season.
That's right.
And, from late March up through the beginning of May, I had trips scheduled for, Portland, Oregon, and of course, Tampa, and my regular stops in Meadville and Marietta.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just come back from the Middle East. I just come back from a week in Knoxville. I think March, I was supposed to be on the road for 16 days out of the month. And then that got cut in half. And, WrestleMania season being lost, and some of those other independent events where the merch take is huge. I mean, we're talking thousands of dollars in lost income.
Oh yeah.
So, in some respects, there are certain things I don't miss at all, but certain things I miss a lot. I don't miss the workload. I'm not one of those guys that's, bored out of his mind and desperate for something to do. Thankfully, I have enough projects going on, as of course you all know, that I still have a way of kind of being productive. I miss the road a little bit. I miss, certain people, certain friends I run into, but my whole philosophy was always, I'm going to go with this wrestling stuff 100% full bore and just run myself ragged, because tomorrow it could all stop,
and then it did.
Yeah. Any unforeseen circumstance, any act of God, any type of business crumbling scandal, anything out of left field, you name it, it could happen. And I got every single second and every single mile out of it that I could, just with that mentality. So then when things stopped, I was going so hard. It was like, God, there's so much opportunity I missed. But there was also the other side of the coin where it's like, I can breathe a little bit now. you know?
Yeah, that and I think, and we've been working together for 10 years plus maybe at this point, and I think that's why we work so well together. 'Cause we both kind of have that mentality. You around wrestling, me around wrestling, and a bunch of other things for the business. There is, and now I get you know the biggest thing I worry about is momentum. I feel like you're one of the people that you're not an in-ring performer that's trying to build on that aspect of things. You have a lot of irons in the fire. So you are able to just pick up the other irons, right?
To an extent, yeah. I mean, now my philosophy is, you know, get everything I can out of all the projects I'm doing at home, all my straight to DVDs, my straight to digitals. We just released Wrestling from the Heartland. We've got Roddy Piper's Legacy coming out. We've got the Brian Pillman Memorial shows coming out. And um, if this continues far beyond what we expect right now, I've got a half dozen more ideas in the back of my head.
Mm-hmm.
There's always something to do, and when I'm able to go back on the road, I can try to find that balance again. But at the same time, I still worry about the fact that I was hitting a good stride career wise, where in the past few years I didn't have to go out and look for the work anymore. It was coming to me more
Yeah.
and more,
Yeah.
whether it be on recommendations, or hey, I heard you on this, or hey, this guy speaks well of you, or hey, I heard you do stuff from home, whatever the case is. And that helped from a money standpoint, it helped from a scheduling standpoint, it helped from just being on bigger platforms and doing live stuff on Fight and IWTV and stuff like that. So, I do worry about what the nature of the business is going to be when it does come back. Is independent wrestling going to have that same momentum that it
Mm-hmm.
did? Is the landscape going to change as far as amount of promotions and, uh, you know, if the promotions do stay around, what's their budget look like, and what workers and talents and staff members are going to say, lower their asking price versus continuing with the status quo because they just want to work. And, is the whole market value of the industry going to drop?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you got to look at it from a dollars and cents perspective, because we have all built our brand to, X amount of worth. And I don't know that any of us are going to have that same worth when this comes back, because the economic impact may make it so where there's, not as much income coming in, or even if there is, it could take months, if not years, to recoup whatever these promotions are losing in these dark months.
Even just a few months before this happened, I have, we're in a very creative business, right? We're not making widgets. We're not, doing something like that. Even what I do outside of wrestling, and I've been doing a lot of history kind of stuff on the side, and I started thinking about like what happens when like a war happens, right? Like all the fun stuff, all the creative stuff is seems feels like devalued, right? And that's kind of the effect of what's happening now, right? That's not the important thing right now, or it's hard to do, or the fit in this kind of new world and landscape, and you have to be kind of ready to adapt to that. And also nobody guarantees that you're successful. You have to be successful.
Yeah, and the interesting thing too that kind of differentiates this situation from a war is that a lot of times your entertainment, um, that's one of your last things to go, because people always need an escape. Whether there's war or there's famine or there's whatever the issue is that's plaguing the world, everybody wants an escape once in a while. But we're in a unique situation where um, live entertainment is no longer an escape. Live entertainment's part of the problem, because now
Yeah.
you're in a large group of people. So this is really, again, it's one of those unprecedented things where um, the business has to adapt and has to change, and the ones that are able to will survive, and unfortunately, there's going to be some that that'll either choose to or won't be able to make that transition. But um, yeah, I think things like Netflix and movies to some degree, movies and television and stuff like that. There's always going to be a place at the table for them because everybody's going to want to have a place to release those endorphins. But as far as attending a live event, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that
Hmm.
timetable is, and I don't know. The other thing I'm worried about is if things open up too quickly, and you've got some of these large gatherings, and something breaks out, and then we're right back at square one again in 2 or 3 months from now. There's so much not indifference, but there's so much uncertainty as far as just what's the right answer, what's the wrong answer, who wants to believe what, and I think it goes to a larger problem of just our media and our leaders being more concerned about the dollar and more concerned about profit and living more in an oligarchy than a democracy because nobody trusts anybody. Everybody thinks that somebody has an agenda, whether it's a politician or a news media outlet or whatever the case is, which is why you have so many conspiracy theories and so many people debunking real stories and what's right, what's wrong, how long should we stay quarantined, should we wear masks. Nobody knows who to trust anymore. I think it's very, very scary. And I think we're seeing our society as a whole and large running around like a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off because they don't know who to turn to. And
Hmm.
this virus magnifies that and it makes everything so much more chaotic, which is going to in turn make it tougher to come back from.
Exactly, exactly. How do you see? Because the biggest thing, obviously, I'm seeing the same thing. Several articles I've been reading this week over on LinkedIn about the live event industry, the arts, museums, things like that, and how they're going to adapt. And unfortunately, we worked on a project about museums in Pittsburgh that just got off the ground several months ago, basically. And and now it's like, okay, what do we do with this now? Um, there's a lot of I'm starting to look at AEW obviously went back to live shows, not with crowds, but at least for the production side. Are you kind of looking at what they're doing as kind of examples? I know some indies have said that they're like Indiana. I heard about shows happening in June. Other groups are trying streaming options with no crowds in states that don't have as tight of lockdowns. Are you looking at those for kind of samples? You, of course, a booker up and around Cleveland with a premier championship wrestling.
From a booking standpoint, it's honestly not something that I'm rushing into.
Hmm.
Um, the Ohio State Athletic Commission has, made the decree that they're not going to issue any permits up through May 31st, I believe it is, and they're going to have a meeting in I think early June to kind of figure out where to go from there.
Hmm.
Um, you know,
And
I
I'm hearing similar in the Pittsburgh Commission as well.
yeah, I think Pennsylvania is kind of a similar timetable,
Hmm.
but we're not WWE and we're not AEW in the sense that WWE has a television deal worth combined in excess of $1 billion. AEW has a TV deal worth $35 million right now, so they are motivated from a business standpoint to produce content every week.
Hmm.
Whether or not they should or whether or not they're obligated to, I think is a matter of discussion and probably debate. But if they feel a need to do that, then from a business and a dollars and cents standpoint, you can understand and justify that. Some of the larger independents, I know one of the final independent events in recent memory was when Game Changer Wrestling did some empty arena events in the
Hmm.
month of March. And from what I recall, I could be getting the figures wrong, but I think they raised in excess of $15,000 just in fan donations that went to pay the talent.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's logical. I know some other companies, AAW, that I've had some experience with, tried to replicate that, and unfortunately, that was when states were getting shut down entirely. But I see a logical reason to do that as well because you're paying your guys, you're paying your talent. As long as you can keep everybody as reasonably safe as possible, medically and as far as just comfortability as well, then if the talent are comfortable taking that risk, then more power to them. I don't think it should in any way be mandatory. It should be based on the individual, which thankfully it is. But
Mhm.
for a company like Premier or any of the more locally based outfits that don't have a huge online presence, um, I don't see a need or any type of desire to do that without your live ticketed audience. If you look at the business model of a company like a Premier and a lot of other organizations, if you take out the live attendance and you try to function strictly on online sales and online revenue, and online maybe isn't your number one source of revenue, unlike a GCW, the odds of breaking even become a lot more insurmountable. So,
Mhm.
I've done this a time or two. It ain't my first rodeo. I'm not somebody that feels the need to go out and produce wrestling to justify or validate themselves, or just do it because booking wrestling is so much fun, because it's not.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
so
no, I've seen you on
when
show day.
exactly. So when we get the safe and clear to start, assembling with 50 people, 100 people, 200 people, whatever it is, I think that's the time you ease back into it. But to do it now, to do a show just to do a show, when I can't look at the numbers and say, yeah, I see a way to make money, or at least I see a way to break even, I don't see a reason to do it. And you've seen my stuff. I've been pretty radio silent unless it's been um posting retro content or
Mhm.
plugging my sites. And that's the focus right now. That's where I'm going to make the money right now. And when the live events are ready to get here, they'll get here. There's no sense in doing something now, blowing money, and risking putting somebody in a dangerous situation just to do the mental masturbation and say, I ran a show. I don't see it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so of course, kind of talking about that throwback, I feel like so some people kind of lucked. I feel like some things that we've done here as a company with Sorgatron Media, Sidekick, we were kind of setting up some things that were perfectly timed. You were working on the Heartland, and disclaimer, I had a hand helping with some of the editing on Heartland as well. Uh, uh, this is a good time to look back as you have on your YouTube. I know it's probably a symptom of you going through all the kind of content that you are for projects right now, like
Mm-hmm.
Heartland, or Wrestling from the Heartland. So it feels like you stumbled in that at the right time, where people are, it seems like everybody's kind of looking back right now and remembering the good times of wrestling to kind of get them through the maybe not great stuff on TV, or weird because they don't feel good about how wrestlers on television in this condition, and things like that.
Yeah, I was really apprehensive about releasing a Wrestling from the Heartland right as this stuff was amping up, but the fans have come out and supported it in droves. It's been, as far as the first I guess almost 2 months at this point, probably the highest sales I've done since Virgil.
Hmm.
Um,
That would be the
and
Legend of Virgil and his traveling merchandise table.
yeah, I don't mean actually Virgil, who's just still on like a flea market corner somewhere, just collecting cobwebs.
I heard he offered to
Um,
buy WWE recently or something. I don't know.
Probably just his agent's doing a publicity stunt.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I have to deal with the real Virgil and all of the tall tales that come with that. But
Hey, what?
people.
One of the good things about being on lockdown and socially distanced is your chances of running into Virgil are a lot lighter, right?
That is true. Yeah,
Unless he
you're
finds
not wrong.
some way around that and starts doing home service. Uh,
If he finds out I have money, he will. Um, but yeah, the Heartland stuff. I was thinking about it, and I can't even remember the conversation with Les Thatcher and I that kind of spawned this.
mm-hmm.
Um, I remember going to his house. I remember I was working in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I made it a point to take a detour to Cincinnati on the way home. And if anybody knows geography, that's kind of about a 3-hour detour. So obviously, I my interest was piqued by something. But I just remember going through his garage and just this huge box of whatever 75 tapes of so many old Heartland shows and Pillman shows and stuff that hadn't been touched in years and years,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where when Les was moving out a couple of years later, he found even more stuff. I had to go back and make a second trip. I mean, there was
Jeez.
so much there to dig through. And, I think that if you like your HD and 4K quality, Heartland's not the set for you because it's, 2001, 2002 independent wrestling, although it is a WWE developmental territory. You don't get the WWE production trucks or the cameras by any stretch.
Yeah, it's
But
kind of,
if you
if you have a promotion now that you wince at because they're using maybe iPhones or something, and you're just like, oh, why is that look so weird? Just think of what it was the I don't want to say like what was the 2002 version of running a promotion and shooting the show on an iPhone, but it's probably the comparative, right?
I mean, to some extent, I would say that if you were a fan back in the day and you enjoyed tape trading
Yeah,
or
yeah.
maybe trying to watch some of the scrambled pay-per-views, not that our content scrambled, but if you like kind of the primitive nature of content production, and kind of its simplicity, I think you really appreciate this because these were pulled directly from VHS tapes, whether it be the masters or just Les's personal copies.
Yeah, yeah.
And all the television is owned by WWE. They bought the rights to that a few months back, but I have all the house show stuff where, Big Show and Eddie Guerrero and John Cena and, Rikishi would show up and help school the young boys, like Jamie Noble and Shannon Moore and Umaga and Charlie Haas and Jimmy Yang and all these guys that were just coming up. And it was this weird hybrid at a weird time in the business. WCW had just died. ECW had just died. There's only one promotion now. And all these guys are jockeying for spots. And you've got like this weird subworld where Steve Blackman and Val Venus and BJ Whitmer and Nigel McGuinness are all in the same place at the same time.
Wow.
And it feels like that shouldn't exist, but
Yeah.
it does. And you see FCW footage, OVW footage, and you hear the stories, but nobody talks about Heartland because they only spent about a year in developmental until they cut costs on developmental and just switched everything to Louisville and got out of Cincy, got out of Memphis and everything. But that's still an incredible story to be told from, the rise of all those names I just mentioned to some of the tragedies like the death of Russ Haas to when Les was profiled on MTV a few years prior, which we'll talk about in Volume 2, and just so much experience training, the Nigels and the BJs and the Shark Boys and guys like that. It really was captivating to me. And when we laid down the audio track to do the commentary on top of this, me and Les, I had a few questions written down for notes, but it flowed so well. And he had such a vivid, sharp memory. Les, I think he turns 80 years old this year, but he has such a vivid, sharp memory of anything. And he just went. And through all 6.5 hours on that Heartland set, I don't think there's a dull moment because, some matches are better than others production wise, and some matches are better than others, match quality wise. We got to give you a little bit of everything. But the story behind the stories are always so compelling because you're dealing with so many personalities and you're dealing with, theoretically, the next generation superstars as molded by WWE.
That's I saw. I have to make mention because I saw her in the chat room. But our friend that's usually contributing to the Mayhem show, Tina, she spent some time in that area and she's reminiscing about the Pillman shows, the Pillman Memorial shows, and I think if I remember from our conversation last week, I think she had a hand helping with some of the audio production or something at the live shows too, if I recall. So a small world, around these Heartland shows.
Yeah, that's wild. And really just digging through these Heartland shows is what got me so motivated to track down all this Pillman footage. And I'm still working to get the best possible quality on a couple of those events, but I'm working hard at it. Those things were never released nationally. They were never presented outside of the Cincinnati market. I think there's a bootleg version of the first one for sale, but that's about it. So
Yeah.
um, I'm working on preserving those, doing the first ever official release with permission of the family with Brian Jr. involved, doing a brand new documentary as part of that set involving people that were there. I've already spoken to Al Snow and Shane Douglas, Dr. Tom Pritchard, Nick Eugene Dinsmore, and Bill DeMott, and I've got a few others coming down the pike as far as just sharing their thoughts and memories on what was truly just a special, unique set of shows that hopefully we'll have out on the market by later this year. But you wouldn't get those shows if those promotions and those talents didn't trust Les Thatcher
Yeah.
to run a tight ship and a class operation. And you can really see in, how the shows are presented back then and how we present them now in the Heartland set, just the class and the detail that went into everything, as far as taking a guy like a Shannon Moore who was doing car crashes and diving off of ladders in WCW, but then Les gets him and says, "You're going to be my next Ricky Morton," and teaches Shannon Moore how to actually work and why and what and when. And Shannon comes out such a better performer, has a great run in every company he's been in. Or, Jamie Noble, who's teaching guys now in WWE, BJ Whitmer, who's teaching guys now in AEW. That lesson started from Les, and it carries on to the next generation even to this day.
Some good stuff. I'm glad you're digging that up. And you've gone on from the conspiracies to to just digging up history now.
You know what, man? I mean, there's so many conspiracies in the world today that people have that actually have a direct effect on our health and well-being that at this point in time, conspiracy theories aren't really fun.
Yeah.
There's a difference between, debating if, Norm Connors is secretly a lizard person, or
Still up for
who
debate.
shot
Still up for
JFK,
debate. Yep.
or if we saw the UFO, releases the other week. There's a
Yeah.
difference between debating that and debating, if the next vaccine has some magical tracking advanced chip that doesn't exist.
Oh,
There's a big difference between that. And
yeah.
I think conspiracy theories exist because people are naturally skeptical, and people, I think it's good to ask questions, but it's good to ask logical questions, and it's good to take logical answers for that. You can't just say, well, you're lying to me because I'm uncomfortable, or you're lying to me because, there's, as Governor Ventura would say, follow the money. And, I don't think that there's there's money in using trillions of dollars to bail out our economy at this point. I think that seems like a pretty far reach to get there. So hey, I'll still debate JFK and Montreal with anybody, but some of the more modern conspiracies, I'm going to tag out on that one and just preserve history, and because I love pushing that nostalgia button. I love finding things that I've never seen before, and Heartland's an important part of our business's history that's never had a chance to be seen until now, and I'm happy that we're bringing it out there. And I want to say this too: Les Thatcher is a credit to our business. There's no job in wrestling I don't think he's held. I think he's done everything, and if I have any influence, I don't obviously, I'm speaking hypothetically, but if I'm someone that has any influence in any of the wrestling's Hall of Fames, I'm asking myself why Les isn't in yet, because Les deserves to be included in every Hall of Fame I can think of for his contributions, who he's trained, who he's molded, and the innovations he's been a part of.
That's right. There's a lot of people claiming to be a giant contribution to the business, but I mean, I think you just look at the fruits of the labor there with that track list.
Well, Les was a part of putting together the first ever WWF magazine back in the day. He was a part of the very first ever wrestling T-shirt for Jack and Jerry Briscoe back in the early 70s. He was a trendsetter in production as far as TV producing, an announcer, a wrestler, a trainer, a mentor. Again, he's done it all. So to be able to sit with him and just peel back a layer or two of that brain and just listen to him talk, And he's still very passionate. There are certain people and things in wrestling today that he's definitely not a fan of. And I definitely hear about that. And that's okay, because I love the energy and the passion, and we really bring that out in the best possible way by showing him, his kids basically just having these, hell of classic matches. And other than a couple of the individuals who are spotlighted because they maybe didn't do so well and kind of got their just desserts. When you've got like Shannon Moore and Jamie Noble, when you've got Pepper Parks and Shark Boy and all these guys, and the Haas brothers and Victoria and Molly Holly and the Raven and Dreamer and Bobby Roode, and I mean, you look at the heavy hitters. There's not a bad match on this set, and it's guys in their prime that had never seen D'Lo Brown. How have I gone this long not mentioning D'Lo? I mean, guys like that who were still in their prime. They were maybe in between TV spots. There was so much going on TV. There was 3 rosters on one show, but they had something to offer, and they offered it in Cincinnati and Heartland. We're just fortunate enough to be able to have really the last surviving footage.
It's great stuff. Joe, it's always great to catch up with you. I know you've been busy with some stuff and getting everything in order yourself in this time. Good to see that you're keeping busy and still making some cool shit out there.
Doing the best I can, man. As always, ProWrestlingLibrary.com. We have over 325 hours of content now.
Damn it! I'm always neck and neck with you now. Like you caught up quick, and it's just like I gotta get another 50 hours on because Joe's catching up to me over at the network.
We just passed episode 101 of PWO and Prime TV. We're gonna get that whole set up sooner than later with the way we're going right now.
Nice. Good stuff.
Heartland's up there for rent or for purchase. Of course, Joe-Dombrowski.com for the DVD. A lot of DVD sales coming in for this one, so I think we're hitting a lot of old school fans. But anybody that's new to the business, if you're a fan or a wrestler, I'd recommend checking this out, because there's a lot of let's say bad habits today that Les wouldn't let fly, and you could see the best of the best shine in that set. So if anybody wants to support, by all means, if you're able to, please do. And if not, head to my YouTube account, binge some classic footage, and maybe if your mouse accidentally clicks an ad or two, we won't tell anybody, eh?
I kick myself if I forgot to mention this, because I haven't watched this yet. I haven't had a chance to sit down with it, but I caught wind. Am I wrong? Somebody told me that you announced a tag team match against, was it a broom and a mop?
That is an accurate statement, because as Les Thatcher would say, coincidentally, we're all whores. It just comes down to establishing price. So,
hey, times are tough,
Listen. I told myself I was not going to sell out my dignity and take any gig.
And
then I got a message from my old pal, Sammy Guevara, who had a pitch for me. And I guess he caught me in a moment of weakness. So there is, if you go to Sammy Guevara's blog, there is a match with Sammy Guevara and, of course, Sammy of AEW fame, teaming with Ricky Starks of NWA fame. And they're in a tag team match against a mop and a broom. And I was given the assignment to call that. And you know what? You could say what you want about Sammy. You can love him. You can hate him. I've done both in my life. But he gets attention, and he gets views. He gets traffic. So, and to be honest, I did that because it was obviously in the context of an entertainment parody. It wasn't, to me, it's a little different than if you go to a live event and you see somebody wrestling the Invisible Man or somebody wrestling, blow up dolls or anything like that. And maybe it's splitting hairs and nitpicking, but I thought the Sammy and the Ricky match was kind of just a fun sketch of a parody that I could do some comedy with, because I don't have a lot of chances to do straight comedy.
Yeah.
As opposed to some of the context of some of the other things in independent events. So yeah, Sammy Guevara's YouTube. I won't plug it too hard because he ain't giving me a cut of anything, cheap bastard. But if you want to go out of your way to find it, you will see me doing some very dramatic commentary with a mop and a broom, and maybe throwing a few jabs at the owner of the vlog as well, if you have a keen ear. I will mention I did my research for the match. I pointed out a lot of very important historical facts about the mop and the broom, such as the mop is second generation and is related to a former tag team partner, Perry Saturn. And not to mention the fact the broom is a tag team specialist, former tag team partner of the Natural, Dustpan Rhodes.
And we'll leave you with that. Thank you so much. Go check out everything, and of course, a lot of great content from Joe over on IndyWrestling.us as well. And follow his YouTube, follow his Facebook. A lot of great stuff he's digging up to help entertain you in these very interesting times. Of course, please check out everything. Please again support everybody that everybody in wrestling. They're trying to figure things out and trying to supplement what hopefully they had big plans that are not happening right now. So again, we have that link, the COVID support page over at IndyWrestling.us. Go check out ProWrestlingLibrary.com, Joe-Dombrowski.com. And until next time, please support independent wrestling and independent broom and mop wrestling, I guess. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.